Next speaker is Anne McBride, who's talking about positive punishment and our pets, why we are still doing it.
I should hasten to add that I'm not. I'm presenting some work from an undergraduate student of mine, Jade Thompson, who can't be here today, so I hope I'm going to do her proud. Okay, what we're interested in looking at... Have I done something wrong? Yes, I have. Sorry, I'm not good with technology, Susie, you know that. That one, okay. We all know about the 5 freedoms, and the 5 freedoms include freedom from fear and stress and freedom to perform normal behaviour. But actually, one of the problem behaviours, we see as problem behaviour across our pet dogs, and a lot of problem behaviour is based in anxiety, fear, or other distresses, or frustration due to a lack of opportunities to perform normal behaviours. And one of the things that can be a factor involved in contributing to problem behaviour is training. And whilst we can use training to prevent behaviour problems or help resolve behaviour problems as far as we can, in many cases it's the core root of the behaviour problems in the first place, and of course can make them worse. So the type of training that's used on these animals is going to be important. And there's been several pieces of research. The first one here is Ellie Hibby, wherever she is. I'm saying it wrong now, but you know who I mean. Hibby. She did some work back in 2004. She could have only been about 6 when she did the work. And she showed that positive punishment in dogs is associated with an increased incidence of problematic behaviours. Other colleagues down at Bristol have been doing some work on looking at the difference between using positive punishment training techniques, positive reinforcement training techniques, or some combination of both, Amy Blackwell and her colleagues. And they found that those people who are using positive reinforcement techniques solely, primarily, have had the lowest mean scores in attention seeking from their dogs, avoidance behaviour from their dogs. These dogs are much more willing to approach them and other people, as opposed to thinking, if I come and see you, you're going to be nice or nasty, and aggression problems. So when they refined their training categories down to a few, they found that those who used punishment methods, whether solely or in combination, had higher significant aggression scores than owners who, this is in the dogs, not the owners, than owners who did not use punishment. So there's some very clear evidence that punishment is not wildly helpful in producing dogs who are going to be good members of our social communities. And of course, positive punishment is based on inflicting pain and installation of anxiety and fear in the animal, and thereby producing behaviours, which is the premise is that we will then increase the avoidance behaviours that enables the animal to do the behaviour we want, and thereby avoid the punishment. And it's surprisingly commonly used on animals by pet owners. Now, I'm talking specifically dogs here, but we could take horses, we could take any other species, okay? Even though it's illegal to use these methods on their children, or at least it is in the UK. Personally, I think this could be a different issue when they become teenagers. Thank you for understanding my bad sense of humour. Okay, good. But we consider these dogs to be family members. Most people will say, oh, he's my family member, he's my best friend, he's my confidant, I love him, he's my dependent, I have an attachment bond to him. I would do anything for my dog until I have to give him away or euthanize him because his behaviour isn't right. Okay. So, if we consider these animals to be our family members and our dependents and our loved ones, how come we still use positive punishment on these animals instead of better, more humane alternatives? And this led us to the research question for Jade's undergraduate project, which is what's the role of communication in popularising the use of positive punishment in dog training in family pets. So we figured there was one man in the world who could help us. Okay, now I am not promoting Cesar's methods, and I have to say it was a little bit of irksome on my part that I had to spend some money on getting a video set of his. However, what we did is we took Cesar Milan in that his core philosophy is that he calls it people need to be assertive pack leaders of their dogs. Now, if you've ever been on assertiveness training, one of the things they tell you not to do is be aggressive. Okay. However, with Cesar Milan, he's extremely popular. The last time I looked at his website, he's got over 700,000 Twitter followers. Eat your heart out, charity people. He is worth something like $45 million. He is doing something correct. What we've got to do is figure out what it is, steal it, and use it to promote positive reinforcement methods. So what are his methods? Well, primarily they're based in positive punishment, prong collars, shock collars, leath jerks, choking, kicking in the groin stomach area, alpha rolls, threatening behaviors, and some of you may remember that this little dog, Holly, at one point said, "I've had enough," and bit him. Okay, so what did we do? Well, we took his first series. Now, Cesar Milan has already got a bit of an advantage when he goes into a household because he is the authority figure, right? As indeed any expert or proclaimed expert would be going into that scenario. And we know from studies by Milgram, for example, that authority figures, being an authority figure or perceived authority figure, is very important in influencing behavior change. So we took his first series in that it was where he was least well known, if you like. And what we did, we looked at 6 of the cases in his video recordings, and we then data analyzed and we recorded all of the conversation between the owners and Milan. We weren't interested in his interactions with the dog. This is purely about the human. So we had 6 cases. We did a qualitative analysis, a thematic analysis on them, which I will talk to you about in a minute. But let's first of all just look at the cases that we have. So we have, the first case was Tina with her male Chihuahua Nunu, who's going to come back into the conversation a little bit later when we talk about the results in the discussion, who was an aggressive little Chihuahua. His owner was, we took some gut perceptions about how we felt the owner was when we looked at the recordings. Okay, she was a slightly anxious lady, and she certainly disliked his aggressive behavior towards her. We then had, the second case was a lady who had a Great Dane whose behavior problem was he was scared of a shiny floor, which is not untypical with a long-legged dog. Suzanne, the third dog, she had Opie. She too will come back into the conversation with the male Labrador who was aggressive. She was scared of this dog and lacked self-esteem herself that she was ever going to succeed with him. We had a Chinese crested Flirt, great name, who was very, the owner was very fidgety. She just wasn't stopping at all, very anthropomorphic about Flirt. Then we had Anne, who was the only one who explicitly said she had no problem with using forceful training methods with her aggressive and nervous Vizsla. And then Karen, who will also come back into the conversation with her Sheltie, who was aggressive. She too was scared of the dog and seemed to be lacking quite a lot of self-esteem. So when we recorded the information, we've gone through it all, we basically came up with 6 basic themes from the data. The first being positive reinforcement to the owner. There was very little positive reinforcement to the dog, I hasten to add, but positive reinforcement to the owner, which were things like, that's correct, absolutely correct, let's hug, you managed to do that correctly, well done, sort of thing. Then we had a lot of social support. You're going to be the perfect trainer, I'm right here with you. So that particular quote came from Suzanne, with the Labrador, Obi. She basically said, are you going to be next to me? I'm really scared of him still. And Milan said, yeah, I'm right with you. We're together. Okay, so there's lots of social support going on. Thirdly, and something that's important, was team language. Very much of I, we, them. Them being the dog. So there was a lot of in-group, out-group messaging going through. We are going to do this. It's a shame they can't understand us. Okay? She wants nothing to do with us. Very much us and them language, which was very important. Then, of course, there was his expertise and knowledge, which basically came across amongst 3 areas. of his expertise to do with knowledge of the dog's behaviour, knowledge of breeds, and knowledge of dominance. And then some forceful language, where he basically took the opportunity for any discussion or any requirement to not do something away from the owner. No control to the owner. He says, right, I've just used the leash backwards, now you're going to do it. As opposed to, would you like to try? It was very much, you're going to do this. I'm becoming the leader of this human group that we have. And then little bits of humour, such as it's like holding a briefcase when you snatch your dog's lead, or come on, mum, bring me the cookies. Okay, so here we have the results of putting all of this together, and you can see that knowledge was there, asserting himself as a knowledgeable expert, but team language was particularly important in the conversations he was having. Okay, so let's just briefly, because we're very short on time, briefly look at what we pulled out of this data. First of all was the use of team language was highlighted throughout this in-group, out-group discussion, with the in-group being Milan and the dog, and the owner, and the out-group being the dog. Now, this has several effects. First of all, we humans want to belong. We want to belong, in this case, with the expert who's coming to help us with our dog. We want to be doing the right thing, and just as we were learning about barley, we want to be within that community and doing the same thing that the rest of that community is doing. Okay? It's a highly desirable motivation for humans to be in the in-group. Okay? So our behavior is going to be influenced by the in-group's favouring norms, which in Milan's case is that we are going to be using forceful training methods, and that it's going to be okay because we're doing it to help them. So he is in that process in that position of being able to dictate those in-group norms. Secondly, we know from research such as Jane Elliott's work back in 1968 on the Blue Eye, Brown Eye program. Do people know about this one? If they don't, that you just have to take a group of kids, or indeed she's done it with adults and prison officers and other human beings, normal human beings in other jobs rather than prison officers. I don't mean that prison officers aren't normal. Okay, where she simply divides you on whether you've got brown eyes or blue eyes. And then basically says those of us with blue eyes are inferior, da-da-da-da-da. And within 15 to 20 minutes, you can see change and prejudice behaviours going on between the brown eyes to the blue eyes. You can see a reduction in self-esteem in the blue eye group. And you can take them around the next day, swap it around, and you see exactly the same thing. And these are even with people who've been office mates or classmates, best friends the day before. Okay? We are very motivated by in-group, out-group norms. If you haven't ever looked at Elliott's work, there's several clips of it up on the internet which are worth looking at. One of the things about in-group adherence is it generates a greater acceptance of violence towards the out-group. And of course we see that in humans all the time. So all he's doing is taking this very basic behaviour and applying it to this relationship. It also, the way he's using it, by always using the term we, allowing the owner to diffuse any responsibility. So the owner is now colluding with Milan in the same way as Milgram's participants colluded in the shock experiments on humans. Okay, so let's just take one of the examples is Karen and the little Sheltie. The narrator comments that Karen can trace the roots of Rana's problems back to when Alana, her daughter, went to college 4 years earlier, and she's feeling guilty and saw herself as the cause of that behaviour problem. But during the conversation, Milan uses terms quite frequently to make sure, such as this quote, to make sure that we're all clear, because that's where we've got to start from, and we've got to start from the beginning, even if we did everything wrong. Now, he wasn't even there 4 years ago, I don't think. Okay, so he's taking that responsibility. He's saying, look, this is a shared responsibility. We're going to do this all together. It's not you on your own, and you can collude with me. Okay, there were other themes that came through, contributing to the creation of the in-group. Humour is a way of sharing social solidarity, and we know from research that's been done, such as that of Plateau and Company, that suggests that social laughing is a way of enhancing group solidarity, and you will join in with that laughter, but particularly you will join in if it is a member of the in-group that you want to be a part of or consider yourself to be a part of. So even if you don't find my jokes funny, you will laugh at them because you're going to be part of my in-group. Okay. Also, this might have been a very good way for Milan to test how he's working with this owner, because we only recorded it as humour if the owner laughed at whatever he had said. Now, he may well be consciously or unconsciously using this to monitor his success in getting this owner on board, because if they're not responding to his humour, then he may well need to redirect how he's working with the owner to get them on board. Social support, all of his conversations about that's a good job you're doing, etc., raising the owner's self-esteem, making them more motivated to carry on because they can do it and it will succeed. Okay. So the point about this research is that it's highlighting that training in communication is going to be really important in when we talk about training trainers, but also in terms of we need to think about how we talk to individual owners, because they are all different, as we have seen earlier today with the brachycephalic study. We need to make, if we're going to go for positive reinforcement, perhaps making it much more strong that instead of it being an out-group member, that the dog is part of the in-group. And we need to teach these things to our professionals. So basically, we need to train trainers in human communication as much as we need to train them in animal communication. We need to enhance the take-up of reward-based methods, and that's been certainly helped in the UK in 2014 by Pets at Home, which is a big chain of pet shops stopping selling Milan's books. Should we be regulating trainers and behaviourists? Well, personally, I think so. We certainly should be setting guidelines and standards. In the UK, we've got the Animal Behaviour and Training Council, and recently the EU has set up some guidelines for standards for dog training professionals. I think this is a way forward. And those standards include teaching these trainers and professionals about human behaviour change and human psychology. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you.